10-footer is in. Big-time bucket from Dane Goodwin. Pump fakes, now he's going to drive down the lane, up to the rim, and lays it home. Great move by Leschewski. Feet ahead movement, catches, banks it in, and one. Over to Starling, 12 to shoot. Oh, he gets the corner. Dribbles towards the middle, crossover, step back, 25-footer is pure! Oh, Trey Wirtz! Now he picks up the dribble, over to Goodwin, back to Ryan. Oh, he wants another one. Give it to him! All day, baby! All night! Cormac Ryan is unconscious! He's got flames coming out of his hands!
Welcome to this week's edition of the Mike Brey Show, presented by TireRack.com. I'm your host, Tony Simeone, joined as always by the head coach, Mike Brey. Coach, a little bit of a different style of show this week. We're going to reflect upon this year, but also just the program as a whole. So I got to ask you, I asked you at the start of this season as well, 23 seasons at Notre Dame. When you think of your time here, just what are the memories that flood to your mind after being at this program for such a long time?
You know, it immediately goes, and when this graduating class leaves, the 70 young men that have come through, finished their careers here, earned degrees. And Tony, they're like sons to me. And they're out there in all phases of life, families doing their thing. And I'm indebted to them. Those relationships are what the memories are.
I imagine it's very rewarding when those guys come back. So I'm curious, with this specific group you have this year, a lot of old veteran guys, as you said, they're going to get you to 70 in your time here. What's been the most rewarding part about coaching them?
First of all, they learned how to win. As young guys, and especially Dane and Nate and I, we were 3-15 in the ACC when they were freshmen. And they ended up, going 15-5, and getting to the tournament and winning 2 games. So I love that part of them. And then, maybe going through COVID with them, quite frankly. They're all here an extra year. They're all here. That was really hard. And we somehow got through it, and we had each other. And so there's some really special bonds, I think, because we went through that stuff together, and they're here another year.
We'll be back with more on the Mike Brey Show, presented by TireRack.com, right after this. Welcome back to the Mike Brey Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's usually time for this week's game breakdown, but this week we're doing something different, Coach. We're going to kind of reflect upon some of the guys on this team and what they've meant to the program. I want to start with Nate Leschewski. We're going to start with him. He's a guy that came in his 5th year now, came all the way back with that recruiting class with him, Dane Prentice, Robbie Carmody. I want you to tell me about the first time you saw Nate Leschewski play and what came to mind and when you knew, I got to get this guy to Notre Dame.
A side gym at Boston College in an AAU event. Here's this 15-year-old, looked like a colt, big colt, running the floor, shooting the ball, skinny as heck, but had a feel for the game. And what I loved about Nate, he reached to us when he was young. He kind of knew, watching us play, the academic setup, man, Notre Dame would be a good fit for me. So his dad brought him by unofficially when he was in 10th grade and 11th grade. And, I always liked, I like guys that like us in recruiting, and he liked us.
As you've gotten a chance to coach him, he's obviously such a unique player, right? He's kind of a modern player, right? A stretch 4, stretch 5. He's so big, but he can shoot it so well. What's the favorite part of his game that you've loved to see and loved to coach and have watched evolve over these 5 years?
The thing that he doesn't get credit for is how unselfish he is defensively. He moves, he rotates, he switches, he helps, to the point where early in his career he would get in foul trouble covering up for his teammates.
Last one on Nate, and this is just looking forward, and who knows what the future holds, but what are you most excited about to see what he does after Notre Dame?
Well, there's no question he is an NBA prospect as he stretches the floor and shoots over the top, and I think coming back will help his stock. At the very least, he's going to make a lot of money in Europe for a long time, but I think the NBA people are really intrigued about how he stretches it, how he defends, and how he rebounds the ball.
All right, let's move on to Dane Goodwin. He, of course, came in with Nate. He's the son of a coach, obviously great basketball IQ. So I want to know, what was the first time you saw him? And when you saw him, you said, okay, got to get this guy to South Bend.
I remember seeing him in the Boo Williams tournament in Norfolk, Virginia,
Okay.
and he blocked 6 shots. He's blocking shots as a 6'4", 6'5" guard wing forward. And I was like, who's that kid? And one of my assistants at the time goes, oh, you remember the kid who was blocking all the shots for Team All Ohio? I go, oh, yeah, that's a blonde-haired guy. That's him. And so what's crazy is he decommits, we get him over here, and we get him.
When you think of Dane Goodwin on the floor, what's the image that comes to mind in his career?
I think some of his key drives at moments, we get him in spots where he drives it hard, or some of his key post-ups. We post him some. Maybe the coolest memory is the picture of him hanging on the rim at the end of the Kentucky
You took
game.
mine, that's
Is
what it
that
was.
the one? Yeah, when I think it was Blake throws ahead and he dunks it and swings on the rim. It lives in infamy all around this place.
It's an awesome photo. I just want to know what he's like off the floor. What have you gotten to know with Dane? Again, you spend a lot of time with him. What's Dane Goodwin like away from hoops?
The way to loosen Dane Goodwin up is to talk about golf. Now, he is almost a scratch golfer. He could play on our golf team here. He is the real deal. And if you ever want to get him talking, because it's hard to get him talking, bring something up about golf, and all of a sudden he'll start flowing. So that's my way to get to him.
Last thing on Dane, when you think about his future, he too, in a graduate season here, has played a ton of hoops at Notre Dame. What excites you about what's next for him after Notre Dame?
He too will have his NBA looks. He will be brought in to work out for a number of teams because he can shoot it. He's got good size. Guys that can shoot that ball now in that league above us, everybody's going to take a look at them. Nate certainly, Dane certainly.
We'll be back with more on the Mike Brey Show right after this. All right, let's move to Cormac Ryan. We're going to do Cormac and Trey here, two guys that transferred into the program but are extremely veteran. I think I talked to you at the beginning of the year and you told me that Cormac was 24. I kind of said, wait a second, this guy is pretty old. Tell me the first time Cormac was on your radar and then how he ultimately made his way to Notre Dame.
Well, we recruited him out of high school and he visited, and really the timing for him here was not great because we still had Hub, TJ Gibbs, and Rex Pfluger. And so he went to Stanford. And then on the transfer, and he was the last of the guys under the old rule, he had to do a year in residence. So he sat while Pfluger and Gibbs were seniors. Perfect. Those guys leave, he goes right into the starting lineup for 3 or 4 or whatever. Now I've lost count because of the COVID year. And he has been the voice and the vibe really the last 2 years.
What's the one that comes to mind when you think of Cormac Ryan?
The nudge on the steal against Rutgers.
Yeah.
The nudge and the steal and the press and the lay-in because we were dead in the water. And fortunately, they were a little flustered, and it was an unbelievable game in an unbelievable atmosphere, one of maybe the best in the tournament in the last couple of years. But he gets in there, gets it, scores it, and now all of a sudden we got life again.
Flip the entire game. Last one on Cormac, same question with everybody else. You look about what's next for him whenever he's done with his collegiate career. What excites you about what's next for Cormac Ryan?
He too, because of his 3-and-D stuff, which the NBA loves, he's going to play. He's going to play for money for a while before he's running something on Wall Street and I'm working for him.
I was going to say, if he doesn't do that, the thing I'm excited for whenever he's done playing is I think if he wanted to, he'd be a great analyst, be a great broadcaster in this industry.
He'd be a great coach, he'd be a great analyst, but he's going to be a CEO. He is going to be a CEO.
Let's talk Trey Wirtz, last guy before we take a break here. He too is a transfer. He comes in a unique time, right? Because it's during the COVID season, really tough time to acclimate. So tell me the first time he jumped onto your radar and then what you remember about recruiting him over to come and transfer to Notre Dame.
We were in the total shutdown mode of COVID that spring, and Coach Humphrey, he presents this kid and a guard. We needed a guard. He knows how to play, feel for the game. You know what he asked me before he committed? He said, Coach, will I be able to use ball screens like Jaron Grant?
Oh, wow.
I mean, he was on Synergy watching us. He's brilliant.
I want to ask you about your favorite part of his game, and we talked about it a little bit. I think you love his demeanor at times too, but just unlocking him this year, you've seen a different side of him, I feel like, on the floor than in the first 2 seasons. Just what have you enjoyed about seeing him maybe flourish a little bit more this season?
Well, he was like the 7th man for 2 seasons. And everybody wants to play more, everybody wants to start. But he was always a team guy. And one of the things I told him on the plane coming back from San Diego, after the NCAA tournament, I said, you have been a great team guy. You need a bigger bite of the apple. You want that. I want that. I didn't want him transferred again because he could have been a grad transfer. I knew Hub was gone and I knew Wesley was probably gone. I said, do the math, man. You're going to be in there. I'm glad that with the opportunity, he's delivering.
He's not scared to take shots late in the game. He wants those shots, and I imagine you're going to need him to take some big shots the rest of the way for you this year.
No question. He is fearless. We saw it, I think it was against Radford. We're dead in the water. He makes 2 in a row. But the shot that he lines up, if you watch the play and how he runs behind Cormac against Wake Forest in the ACC tournament, and he's yelling at him, I'm back here. The way he rises up so confidently to drill that thing. Now we need to give him a little help with Marcus playing and him getting off the ball, ready to shoot it. But as far as what we've asked him to do to date, the man has delivered.
He also gave us one final Jack Nolan got it call at the end of his career, which was great. Last one for Trey, just as you think about what he'll do after Notre Dame, what excites you most about the future for Trey Wirtz?
If Apprentice Hub has found a great niche over in Germany, and I think he can find a niche playing for a while. But here's a guy who's going to get his master's. He's going to get a graduate degree from Mendoza, and he's going to go into business someday, maybe sooner than later. But he's got a chance to play in Europe a little bit.
To your point too, when I talked to him last year on the show, he's one of the best interviews. Like you said, you can tell basketball IQ off the charts.
I really like asking him things before practice or during practice. What do you think?
Coach, appreciate it. We'll step aside and come back with more on this week's edition on the Mike Brey Show right after this. It's now time for this week's edition of Irish Intel. Coach, always one of my favorite times. This is against Boston University. I thought last year on baseline inbound sets, you guys were unstoppable. You get a great look here against BU early in the game.
We're not as good as last year yet, but we're a work in progress. But we get this to Cormac, and he is in that rhythm of catch and shoot. But it's just really good execution where we give him a stagger, a screen on one side, and a single screen on the other. And he really comes off and uses it, and he's got a little window to come up and fire. Trey delivers the ball. Our goal is to be as efficient on out-of-bounds under this year as we were last year.
This is going to be a lazy comparison for me, but I'm going to go way back. This is, to me, where I see is single-double. You can send Cormac either way. I think of J.J. Redick against Duke. You put one guy on one side, send him a double one way. He can go either way, right? And he picks his spot and finds the open three.
Either way, and we run this single-double. We run it as a set for Dane a lot of times offensively. So it's kind of a choice here, and he leaves a little early. We wanted him to wait for Marcus to get down there. He leaves a little early. He's a little anxious, and he even gives his guy a shove a little bit, which is a veteran. He gets him in the chest a little. But watch this catch and fire. This is coach's clinic stuff. Catch, square feet, boom, form, doesn't even hit any metal.
So, Coach, first time this year we're going to focus on some defense. Thought this was a great play late. Ven's going to get the block, but tell me what you guys do defensively here. It looks like you're switching everything out on the perimeter.
We call this green. No three-point shots. Switch everything. We're up high. So it ends up putting Ven out on a guard. He does a great job of being long and blocking a jump shot without fouling. That is just fabulous defense by a big guy on a guard. And he's only in his 10th or 9th game in college. But we switched it all because right there, up 5, we just can't give up a 3. Trey switches. Yep, we switch again here. Trey switches again, right? We're hugging, switch again. And just beautiful by Ven and really calm. And that 3 goes in, it becomes a different night right there. So green, switch it all, no 3s.
Welcome back to the Mike Brey Show, presented by TireRack.com. We are still looking at this roster, kind of reflecting on some of the guys. And, Coach, we talked about the veterans you've had so far this year. I want to talk about some of the new guys that we were just getting to know. And I want to start with Ven-Allen Lubin.
He's going to play like Nate, only with more of an inside presence. But he can shoot the ball. That's not on the top of our list right now, him shooting 3s. Maybe it will be in January, but right now, in the paint, driving the ball, rebounding, and he's really accepted that role. He understands this is what I got to do with this group. As he gets to be more of a veteran, and certainly as a sophomore, he's going to be able to do a lot of stuff because he's got a stroke, he can drive and pass it. Sky's the limit. He's really gifted.
Let's talk about the other freshman that's joined the roster this year. Maybe a little bit more pomp and circumstance with J.J. Starling because he's a McDonald's All-American, understandably. He's grown a lot this year. As you project him out just this year and going forward, just where do you think his game can go? What kind of player can he be?
Well, I mean, the NBA prospect projection is dead on. But he's putting it on the floor. He's getting to the basket. I think he's become a better passer. His shooting will come around because he is a good shooter. It's just coming around a little fast right now. But he's the whole package.
Next guy I want to talk about, Marcus Hammond. He's the name that he's kind of like the magic elixir that's going to maybe fix everything and get everything going when there's 7 guys on the floor. We've seen him play a little bit this year, but he had a great career at Niagara before he came over here. When did you first become aware of him when he was an option to possibly come to Notre Dame? What was your first impression of Marcus Hammond?
This is where you give credit to Antoni Weiss and your assistants digging out guys in the portal. Tone remembered him because he played against him in the league when he was at Siena. And he's a scorer. Great story. Only one college offer out of high school, Niagara, and they had to beg Niagara to take him. And he's a 1,000-point scorer. He can get to the lane. He's got a feel for the game, and he's just going to add to our group as he gets healthy.
Last guy I want to talk about is someone that just has not been able to get on the floor because of injuries over the course of his career. But we talked about him recently because he did get on the floor, which was a great sign to see late in the game. Robbie Carmody.
He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Pennsylvania, and sadly, he's had no luck with injuries. But lately, he's back practicing with us, and he's part of this old group with Nate and Dane, who's been around. And even though he's not been able to be in games, he's part of our fabric. He's a little bit of the therapist of the team.
Yeah.
When guys need to talk to somebody, Robbie's been there, and I've appreciated his leadership and his involvement with our group.
Welcome back to Inside Notre Dame Men's Basketball. It's time to wrap up this week's unique edition of the show. Coach, I got to say, first of all, I've really enjoyed this episode because I've learned a lot about the first time you met some of these players, and they've been synonymous with this program for the last few years. It's been great to hear you talk about them. I want to ask, though, about this importance and impact of making the NCAA tournament again. It felt like such an accomplishment last year. You get the sense like if you do it again, maybe make a deeper run this year, it really validates that for this group that's put in so much work. What would it mean for you guys to get back there and make another
Well, that's what Cormac, Dane, Nate, and Trey have talked about all summer. It's not anything I need to talk about, and that's what they shoot for. They tasted it last year, and they hung around a little bit in March. I hope they're addicted to it and want to get back. It's one of the ultimate experiences that they had, and it would be a heck of a way for them to wrap up their career.
What does this group mean to the program, and what does it mean to see them kind of get to the end of the road here?
And I think I mentioned it earlier, that we went through COVID together, and of course they got an extra year. That was crisis every day. And it's not like we won 25 games either. But just being locked in this place and traveling around and playing in empty arenas and having Christmas at my house with no one around, which we've stayed with that tradition, by the way. There's something about the bonds there. And whenever guys come back, I always want them to talk to the team. And you know what? The pressure I feel, certainly we want to win and get to the NCAA tournament. I want kids to have a good experience. Yeah. And when they talk about how this was the best 4 years or 5 of their life, then you go, all right, we must have done something right with them.
Coach, appreciate it. That does it for this week's edition of the Mike Brey Show, presented by TireRack.com.